Hello everyone, thank you for joining me for today's webinar. In this webinar, I'll go through the closing of the school year process. We'll review the tasks that are done before running the wizard, then we'll actually run the close of the school year wizard, and finally we will review the tasks that are done after running the wizard. And if you may have any questions during this webinar, feel free to email support@pcreducator.com and we'll be happy to answer your questions. For this webinar, I'll be referencing this article. It's called Closing the School Year, and other relevant articles that are linked to this article. And this article can be found in our knowledge base. So closing the school year is a process designed to finalize the current school year academic activities and prepare the database for the new year. And in order to actually run the close of the school year wizard, a user needs to have a security full role. And for the pre-close checklist items and the post-close checklist items, it really depends on the task that you are completing. For example, if the tasks are related to scheduling, then you would need the scheduling role. And each school appoints one person from their team to run the wizard itself. And the closing of the school year wizard closes the school year for all divisions. Therefore, when you work on pre-close checklist items, make sure that you go through each division. For example, if you forget to copy the schedule for one of your divisions, then when you close the school year, that schedule won't be moved over or won't be copied over to the new school year. So make sure that you review each division before you close the school year. Alright, so let's get started. If I scroll down here, these are all the pre-close tasks that need to be completed. Some tasks may not be applicable to you. For example, this particular task is only for BC schools, so you would ignore anything that's not applicable to you. And each of these links would give you more information. So when you click each link, it'll give you more details about how to do these tasks. So the first item on the list is to archive individual student reports. So these could be report cards or progress reports. Most likely by this time of the year, like in June and July, you've most likely already archived your report cards and your progress reports, but if you have not, you would do that before closing the school year. And when you archive your reports, they could be made available on the CMS portal, such as the parent portal or the student portal, and they'll be attached to the student record so that even after you close the school year, you would have access to the previous year's reports that you had archived. So to archive the reports, you go to the PCR administrative portal, and again, you would be doing this for each division, and you can switch between divisions here. So when you're on the student screen, you would select the students for the students that you want to archive the reports for, and you would go to multi-action, archive PDF. On this screen, you can select the type of report that you're looking to archive. For example, you may be archiving report cards. And then you can enter the parameters like what marking period is this for. So most likely by this time you'll be archiving it for the last marking period. You can enter other parameters and make sure that you select the right report that your school uses. Your school most likely would be using one report card for each division, so make sure that you pick the correct report. And here at the bottom, you can put in a description of what this report is. So if it's like a semester 2 report card, you can put in a description. You can select the right marking period. And available date is the date that these reports will show up in your portal, such as in your parent portal or student portal. So once you enter all the appropriate parameters, then you can click Request Report, and the system will start to archive these reports. Once the reports are archived, if you actually want to confirm that they have been properly archived, you can actually go to this screen, Comments and Marks, Official Reports. And by default, you'll see a list of all the reports that have been archived for the current year. And if you want to see previous reports, you could click Include All and All Divisions, and it will show you all the reports that may have been archived for your school. So this would be a screen that you can come to confirm that you have properly archived your reports. You can click on the PDFs to open them and confirm that they look correct. Alright, so I'll move to the next item, which is to copy scheduling data. So basically, when I go to my scheduling section or my scheduling tab, and I'm gonna first go to the current year, and then under scheduling tab, if I go to my sections, I have all these different sections for my current year. I have the sections that are assigned to different rooms, period codes, and they have students as well. But if I switch to the next year's schedule, that's empty right now. So basically, if you want to copy the current year's schedule to the next year, you would want to do that before you close the school year, because when you close the school year, whatever your next year's schedule is, that'll become your current year's schedule. So in order to copy the schedule, and you may not want to copy everything, like you probably wouldn't be copying the students that are in those classes, but you may still want to copy the actual course sections and maybe even the rooms and the period designations that you have assigned this year that you may want to copy to next year. Or if you're using the master schedule builder, where you would want the system to automatically optimize the schedule for you and assign the periods and the rooms, you could still copy the course sections but not copy the room and period designations that are tied to those course sections, and then you can use the master schedule builder and build your schedule in the next year, and then when you close the school year, it'll just copy over. And you would be able to work on the next year's schedule before closing the school year, and you can also make the next year's schedule available in the parent portal and in the student portal even before closing the school year. But if you are going to use the master schedule builder, that's only available in the next year. So you would want to first make sure that your schedules are set up for each division in the next year, and then you should close the school year so that they can copy over and they become your current year schedule. So to copy the current year schedule to the next year, you can switch to the next year schedule first here. So here you can see that I don't have any courses, I don't have any course sections, and I don't have any blocks. When I click the block tab, I don't have any blocks or even period codes. So to copy the schedule, I click on the summary tab here and then click on copy move schedules. So the first step would be where it says copy to next year. We're going to copy the blocks and click copy. So here it says 40 records copied. Then I can copy the period codes. Here it says 10 records copied. Now I have two options. I can either copy the course sections without the period and the room associated with them, or I can go to copy next year's special, and if I use this option here, the system will actually associate the same periods and rooms to the course sections that are being copied. So if you're planning to assign different periods and different rooms, or maybe use the master schedule to have those periods and rooms assigned to your sections, then you can use the course sections without the connection. But for this webinar, I'll actually use this one so that periods and rooms are tied to my course sections. So I'll go ahead and click copy special, and it says 292 records copied. For other items, it's up to you if you want to copy like period inclusions and room inclusions and so forth. But most of the time, or most of our schools only copy blocks, periods, and course sections. So now when I go back to my course section screen, in the next year you can see that my sections are copied now, and they're assigned to the same periods and the same rooms as in the current year. However, I did not want to copy the students into the next year's schedule because each class will be assigned different students. So that's why I didn't copy that part. Alright, so let's look at the next item. So here's a set next year student fields. What this means is that when I go to admin students, I have different columns here. So one of them is grade next year. So basically, before you close the school year, you want to make sure that the grade next year field is correct for all the students, because when you close the school year, a grade next year will become the current grade. So in order to advance the student grade levels and a couple of other things, you would select all the students. And so usually this process would be done around February, when you're using like your contracts, when you're going live with your contracts. So most likely it is already done by this time. But if it is not, and you see students who do not have the correct grade next year, then you would want to go through this process. So I've selected my students, and I go to multi-action, and there's an option called next year. And when I go to that screen, I can just make sure that the grade next year is set to grade +1. So it'll take the current grade and it'll advance the grade next year by 1. And then these are other designations. So if students who are currently in day or boarding will be marked in the same way for next year. Same thing with international and school fund code, which applies to Canadian BC schools. So once you check off these items and click perform selected actions, then you'll see that grade levels for the next year will advance for each student, so that when you close the school year, the students will be assigned to the new grade levels. Alright, so let's go through the next item. Update status, substatus for next year. So what that means is when I go to my list of students, there's a status and substatus for the current year and a status and substatus for the next year. And I want to make sure that the next year status and substatus is accurate. So basically, if students are withdrawing or graduating, I want to make sure that their status and substatus is updated accordingly, because when I close the school year, the status and substatus next year will become my current status and substatus. And most of this is typically handled automatically through the enrollment contract. So when a parent decides not to enroll their student for next year, the student can automatically be marked as withdrawn. Or if the parent does decide to enroll the student for next year, the student will automatically be marked as enrolled. But typically you would use this process when you are graduating students for next year. So to graduate students, you would select the students that you're graduating. So I'm going to go ahead and search for all my 12th graders. Once I find them, I can select these 12th graders, and you can see that their status next year is enrolled. So I need to change them to graduated. So I'm going to go to multi-action, actions add, and because I'm trying to update the status for next year, I'm going to pick the next year, which is 22-23, and I'll select the action category, and the action is called graduated, so I'll pick that action. And then I'll pick the next grade level because I've picked the next year. And in the date, I can specify the graduation date. So if they had graduated back in May, I can pick that date. And then I can click Add New. Now when I go back to Admin Students, you can see that all these students are now marked as graduated, not returning. If you do not use the enrollment contract, or if the parent did not opt out if the parent did not opt out their student for the next year through the contract, so if the student is withdrawing next year, you could run the same process for students who are not returning, or like if they are withdrawing, you could do the same thing. Or you could do it with any other action. So if someone is leaving, like taking a leave of absence or something else, you would just want to make sure that you tag them appropriately so that when you roll over the school year, their status and substatus is accurate for the current year. Okay, let's look at the next item. Enroll incoming students. So this would also be automatically done if you are using our enrollment contract. And this item can be done before or after closing the school year. But basically, let's say that you're not using our enrollment contract. In that case, you would go through this. You would be going to the admissions module, increase applicants. I'm going to make sure that I'm in my all school or all campus division, which is my admissions division. So if you want to enroll applicants to your as students, you would select whichever applicants you want to enroll. You can search by academic year or other requirements, or like such as people who have completed the application. So once you find the people that you actually want to enroll, I'm just gonna search for uh, applicants who are marked as application complete. So you could select those applicants and go to multi-action and click enroll. And then you can pick the correct profile. So if these are new students and you have a enrollment profile set up to enroll new students, you would pick enroll new student enrollment profile. For the year, you can pick the year. It could be the year that the inquiry has applied for, which is in currently would be 22-23 year most likely. And then you can check off students and parent logins if you want to create a login. Once you do that, you can click enroll, and these applicants would be enrolled as students in the administrative side. But again, this process would be automatic if you are using the enrollment contracts. Okay, let's go to the next item. Adjust the parent portal and student portal. So, as I was mentioning earlier, when you close a school year, the next year schedule becomes the current year schedule. So basically, when you close a school year, you may have your widgets set up in your portal so that the schedule is visible to your parents and students. And if you don't want the schedules to be visible, you would need to make sure that you hide them. Or perhaps you had made the schedules available for next year before closing the school year, and if you still want to share those with your parents and students, you would update the schedule widgets to point to the current year schedule. So I'm going to pull up my parent portal here, and there are different ways to hide or remove widgets. So if I click this content link on the top left, and you would need a website full role to be able to see it. So if I click the content link, I have access to remove or edit different kinds of widgets. So schedule could be one of these widgets that you may want to hide until you're ready to share the schedule with your families and students. So if you wanted to remove it, you can simply click the X button and it'll remove the widget. And then later you can add it back by going to the add widget option. You could also hide the widget by going to the properties of the widget. And if you have a filter already set up, you can pick a filter, like for example, I have one set up that's called administrators. So if I were to pick this wizard and save it, then the widget would only be visible to my administrators. So there are different ways where you can hide pages and different kinds of widgets that you may not want to share with your families or students right after closing the school year. So if you need further help with hiding such widgets, feel free to reach out to us. Okay, let's move to the next item. Confirm teacher categories. So for this one, I'm actually going to click the link and quickly read the instructions. So here it says the CMS teacher portal has a widget which allows teachers to map their gradebook categories associated with the current year course section to a corresponding course section for next year. And this widget is typically placed on the gradebook settings page. So I'm going to go to the teacher portal, and under class I'm going to click gradebook configuration. Now because each school has the ability to customize their own portals, in your teacher portal it may be named differently or it may be in a different place, but there would be a place similar to this particular screen. And if you scroll down, there's a section that shows you the next year course section and the current course section. By default, if teachers are teaching the same section next year that they're teaching in the current year course section will automatically be mapped out to the next year course section. But in a case where they are teaching a different section next year, so let's say that a teacher is teaching geometry sections 1, 2, and 3 in the current year, but in the next year they're also teaching section 4, which they're not teaching in the current year. If that's the case, you could map out one of these other sections to the section for next year. And when you do that, the assignments, the categories, the settings, they'll all be copied over to the new section for next year. If the teacher does not map out their current course section to the new class that they're teaching next year, then the categories, assessments, and settings, they will not transfer over to the new section. So this is something that just only needs to be done by teachers that want to copy over the same settings for a new class that they are teaching next year. Okay, let me move on to the next item. Set BC tracks month field. This only applies to British Columbia schools in Canada. So when I go to comments and marks, mark types, let me switch over to my upper school division. So I'm going to go ahead and pick one of these mark types. So when school year is closed, You have grades that move to historical marks. So for Canadian BC schools, you would want to make sure that you specify the correct months for your mark types, because that data will be moved to historical marks. And there are different places to specify the month. There's one on mark types, there's one on the student override screen, and then there's also one under courses. Under course details, there would be an option for the month here as well. So there is a hierarchy, and if you go to the link here, it explains how these months are moved over. So there's a hierarchy where when it says when determining tracks month for a student in a course, the system will first look at the student course override for the student, then the mark type, then the course month specified on the course. So it'll give the highest priority to the override on the student record. But if that month is not populated, then it'll check the mark type screen. But if it's not even populated there, then it'll check the course record and grab the month from there. So before you close the school year, just make sure that you specify the tracks month in the appropriate places. So that wraps up the pre-close checklist items. Now I'm actually going to go through and run the close of the school year wizard. To run the wizard, we go to the security tab, click maintenance, and click close school year. Keep in mind again that you would need a security full role to be able to access the wizard. So I'm going to go ahead and click close school year. And if there's any reason that I'm not able to move forward, I should be able to see that reason here. So right now I can't click on the next button because it says that in my upper school division, daily rotation indicates that today is in session. So if there are any issues that need to be adjusted, you would need to adjust them first before you move forward. Some other items could be that your marking period information is open, like your attendance dates are open, or your report card entry dates are open, or if you have check-in, check-out records which have not been invoiced. So there could be several reasons why you cannot move forward with closing the school year. So you would need to address those before you move forward. So in this example, it says that my daily rotation indicates that today is in session, so I can go to my daily rotation and I'll just set it to so that it's not in school. I'll just blank it out and hit save. And then once I come back here and refresh, you can see that the red message is gone. Now I can actually continue by clicking the next button. So on this screen, this is called scheduling next year's stats. This is just a way to confirm that all the divisions that needed their schedules to be copied have been copied over to next year. So earlier I had copied schedule for the upper school division, so I can see that the blocks are there, period codes are there, and so forth. But there's some other divisions like the summer division and the online program and so forth that do not have their schedules copied over. So as an administrator, when you review the screen, make sure that all divisions that are meant to have their schedules copied over have done that before you close the school year. So I'm gonna go ahead and click next again. So this screen is called different courses with the same name, and this would list any students that are taking more than one course that has the same course name. And so if I go to the documentation and I click this link that says fix different courses with the same name, it provides more details. So if a student has uh, two different classes with two different IDs, but they're both called, they both have the same name, like in this example, Algebra 1, then the student will have two rows appearing on the transcript, both showing Algebra 1. And so this article provides some information on how to fix that information. So if one of the course name is incorrect, you can go and fix the course name, or you can close the school year and then go back to historical marks afterwards, and you can update the course name afterwards directly in historical marks. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and click next here. So this section is called include on transcript. So basically, whenever we look at courses, so if I go to admin courses, there's a field called transcript or include on transcript. So if a course is included on transcript and it has the correct mark types configured, when you close the school year, courses that are included on transcripts, their grades will move to historical marks. So what this particular screen tells you is that in these divisions, so it gives you a list of each division, and it gives you a list of courses in that division that are not checked to be included on transcript. So if you notice a course that you actually do want to be do you would want their grades to be moved to historical marks, you can just click edit and you can check include on transcript and click update, and that course will be updated to be included on a transcript. So I'm gonna go ahead and click next. This is the orphan grades screen, and basically it shows any students who have more than one grade for the same course in the same marking period. So in this example, I have Greg. He has two different grades uh, for the same marking period for the same course, the English 3 course. And this could sometimes happen if you had transferred the student from one section to another section of the same course. And there are correct ways to transfer students. So if you had not used the correct procedure, one of the grades could have been orphaned. So in a case like this, you can decide which grade you want to keep. So if the student, for example, was moved from section 3 to section 1, and if the student is not in section 3 anymore, in a case like that, the section 3 grade will show up as orphaned. So if you don't need this grade because the section 1 grade is accurate, then you can just delete the orphan grade. Or if the student is meant to be in both sections, and if you see that it shows that one of the section has an orphan grade, that means the student is not in the other section anymore. If that's the case and the student belongs to both sections, then you can make sure that you add them to both sections. But if you go back to the close of the school year article and click the orphan grades link, it explains this information in more detail. So I'm gonna go ahead and click next. The grades to history screen basically shows a list of all the grades that will be transferred over to historical marks. So what we need to look for is there's a column called mark type topic. These are the mark types that the school names. So you may be using, or you may be naming them as quarter or semester 1 or semester 2. And then the grade type is an internal code in our system. So like you'll see coursework, exam, term, and so forth. So any grades that are marked to be that are associated with courses that are marked to be included on transcripts, and any grades that have a grade type of any of coursework, exam, term, final, effort, those would all be moved to historical marks. The only grades that don't move to historical marks have the grade type of other. So when you look at this screen, you should see like for each grade mark type, how many grades will be moved over to historical marks. So if you notice any of these mark types that have really low number of grades, you may want to double check to make sure that your mark types are configured properly, or make sure that teachers have actually put in grades for those mark types, or you would want to make sure that the course is included on transcript. So you would be able to review the how many grades are moved for each division from the same screen. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and click next. The attendance to history screen shows the types of different attendance records that you have. Um, Basically, whenever the school year is closed, attendance gets summarized to history, so that when you're looking up a student record, you would be able to see how many times they were absent excused, or how many times they were absent unexcused, or late excused, or late unexcused. So on this screen, any this under description is the name of the attendance that the school defines themselves, and then historical meaning is the internal meaning in PCR. So any attendance type that has a historical meaning of either absent excused, absent unexcused, late excused, or late unexcused will be summarized, but any attendance record that doesn't have a historical meaning will not be summarized. So if you have, like, for example, there's left early, if I were to close the school year, any student with left early, that attendance won't be summarized unless I click edit and assign a historical meaning. To review historical attendance on a student's record, you could just go to admin students and go to details of a student, and there's a section, it's called historical attendance. This is where the attendance gets summarized for each year. So here I can see, like, for different years, like how many times this student was absent excused, absent unexcused, and so forth. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that when you close the school year, the details of each attendance are cleared out from the system. The attendance only gets summarized. So if you do need individual, like, details of each attendance, like what day someone was absent and so forth, you could export that information out before you close the school year, and you can export it out through either the data analytics tool, or we also have standard PDF reports that you can use to export that information. And this attendance to history, the attendance that gets summarized is just daily attendance. So if you have period attendance that you want to keep, you can also export that out. There's also a way to convert period attendance to daily attendance. So if your school only takes period attendance and you want to convert that to daily attendance, there's a way to do that too. So you would go to your period attendance screen, and once you are on that screen, you can select any sort of period attendance records that you want to convert. You will select those records and then use the option that says generate daily. It'll take period attendance and create daily attendance records based on those period attendance. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and click next. This screen just shows any overlapping marking periods. So this is each division, and if there are overlapping marking periods, meaning like if you have attendance dates that overlap between different marking periods. So if you have semester 1 and semester 2 and the dates overlap within each semester, you would be able to see that information here. But most likely this will be cleared. This will be cleared out. So you can just go ahead and click next. This screen, users needing correction. This shows you a list of, or it gives you a total of each, or the numbers of users that have any issues. So, like in this example, it's telling me that there are 10 users where they're associated with multiple parent households. So, like it says, parent primary associated with multiple users. So, different users are associated with the same family. Then this one says that the parent user has no indicator, so like there's no primary or secondary indicator. And when you click on these links, you can see who those users are. So like if I click the link here, it shows me these two records. So if I go to one of them here um, and click on profile, it shows that there is no household indicator. So I have to specify whether this user is for parent 1 or parent 2. If you go through the article, it tells you how to fix the different kinds of errors. So you would want to fix these before you move forward, but the system won't prevent you from closing the school year. But ideally, you would want to fix this before you move forward. And once you fix them, if you click refresh, then these errors should all be gone. So I'm going to go ahead and click next again. So on this screen, your screen will look different than my screen when you first go through closing the school year. So when you get to this page, you actually see a button that will ask you to request that your database is archived, and it'll say that it could take us up to 2 business days to do it. So basically, once you click that button, we would get a notification, and we would archive your database. And once we archive your database, we'll send you an email um, to let you know that it has been archived. And once we send you the email, you can come back to the close of the school year and click the next buttons until you get here. And when you get here, you'll see that it'll show a message that says archive completed successfully. Then you can go ahead and click next to finish closing the school year. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. So now I'm on this screen, it says close option. So this is the last screen before we finish running the wizard. So you'll see that there's a finish button this time instead of the next button. Here it says number of days school was in session. So you're going to type in the number that your school was in session for the year. By default, it'll show 180, but you can modify that, and then set your admissions here to whatever the admissions year needs to be. So for this year, it'll most likely be 22-23 year. So once you update these settings, then you would be ready to finish closing the school or closing the school year. Before I press the finish button, I do want to point out one other thing. So when we go to the article and I click closing the school year wizard, and scroll down, there are certain things that'll be cleared out when you close the school year, such as certain types of emails and other information such as detailed attendance records. So make sure you review this screen. Make sure you review this article, and if there's anything that you need to export beforehand, export that information before closing the school year. Alright, so I'm gonna come back here, and then I can go ahead and click the finish button. When I click the finish button, I'll see a progress of it finishing it up. So right now it says like please wait, then it's showing me a progress of what is going through, like it's copying schedules, it's cleaning up notifications, is summarizing attendance, and so forth. So once this is done, I will see a message to let me know that the close of the school year has been completed. And this could take either maybe like a few seconds or a couple minutes or longer, depending on how much data you have that needs to be archived or cleaned up or whatnot. So now my school year is closed. So here it says the year end closing is now complete. Welcome to the 22-23 academic year. So that finishes up the actual wizard. Next, I'll go through the post close checklist items. Alright, so I'm going to pull up my article. Um, and here's the link that says closing the school year review post close checklist. I'm going to click on that. And then let's just quickly review it. So it says confirm that student status for current year is correct. So basically, if we go back to admin students, you just want to make sure that the status for the current year, the status and substatus are accurate for each student. So basically, we shouldn't see any of our graduated students on this list or any of the withdrawn students on this list. We should only see students that are actually being enrolled in the new year. If you do see any students that shouldn't be here, like perhaps you forgot to properly graduate students, or perhaps you forgot to withdraw students, you can still do it the same way that we had gone over earlier in the webinar. You would select the students and apply the appropriate actions. The only difference would be, instead of marking the graduated or the withdrew action for next year, you would just tag them for the current year, and it'll update their status and substatus for the current year, so that they won't show up on the list anymore, because they won't be enrolled once you tag them with the new action. Let me get back here. So it says confirm homerooms and advisors for students. So yeah, once you roll over the school year, you'd want to make sure that if you did have advisors and homerooms, that they show up as well. So I'm gonna just check off. There's this homeroom column. I'll check this off and click apply. So this is the advisor column and the homeroom column, and these get populated from the course section. So if you have enrolled students in the advisory or the homeroom class for the current year, this information will be populated. When I was copying the schedules earlier, as I had mentioned, I had not enrolled students into any classes, which is why the advisor and the homeroom column is empty. But in your case, by this time, you would probably have had finished up the schedule for the next year. So you would most likely, if you are using advisors and homerooms, you would see them populated here, as long as the student is in the advisory or the homeroom class. Okay, so update year-specific attributes if applicable. Like for example, you may be tracking student groups through attributes. So if you need to update attributes for students, for student groups or so, you can select the students that need to be tagged with an attribute and go to multi-action, and then attributes add, and then you can pick whichever attribute you want to tag the students with. Pick the attribute and click add, and then those students would be tagged with the appropriate attribute. Then it says update the marking period info for the new year. So if we go to maintenance, under admin maintenance marking period info, and you would do that for each division. So basically you would want to make sure that all the attendance dates, the report card entry dates, and other dates are all accurate for each marking period for the new year for each division. Then it says update the daily rotation. That daily rotation basically refers to what days during the calendar that school is in session. So daily rotation can be accessed through scheduling blocks daily rotation. So once you're on this screen, you can specify, like this is set to June, but if my school begins in September, I can pick September, and I can specify like what rotation days are in session during what calendar day. So once I update the calendar and hit save, I would consider this daily rotation item to be completed. Then it says if you are using the development module, check development campaigns. Make sure you have the next year's annual fund created if applicable. Development fiscal years are independent of the school year and do not get updated through close of the school year process. This is only a reminder. So basically, what it's saying is that when you go to the development module and click on under the development module, if you click on campaigns, if you need to create a new campaign for the new year, you can click new and put in the start end date for the new fiscal year, so that whenever you're getting donations for the new fiscal year, they would be going into the right campaign. All right, so then it says if you are using development, run the alumni wizard for graduating students. So students who have graduated, you could search for those students. There are various ways to do it, like you can do it by graduated year. You could do it by using a filter that looks for anybody that has an action of graduated in a certain year. But basically, you would find them. I just pick random students for now. You could also run an alumni wizard for withdrawn students. So even if they're not coming back, if you do want to make them alums, you can do that. So you select the students that you want to make alums in development and use the alumni wizard. And then once you go to the alumni wizard, you can populate the information appropriately and then click create alumni, which would create a development record for these students. And we have details about the alumni wizard. By if you click this link, you'll be able to get more information on how the alumni wizard works. Then it says update online donations to use new year campaigns products. So if you have points to the new campaign, like so if you have an annual fund 22-23 campaign, you would go to your online donation page and point it to that particular campaign. Again, this is really independent of closing the school year. You could do that like if your fiscal year begins on July 1st, then you would do that on July 1st and not at the time that you close the school year. Then it says check the admissions academic year and school info. Check the apply online academic years for your inquiry apply online and follow advancing admissions record for the next admissions year if applicable. So when we go to school info, which is under admin maintenance school info, you can confirm that the admissions year is accurate. So right now it's set to 22, 23, 24. If you're still accepting applications for 22, 23, you can just switch it back. And then when you are done with the 22-23 year and you're only accepting applications for 23-24 and after, you could update the admissions year at that time. The part about checking the apply online academics year for your inquiry apply online, this means like on your online forms, just make sure that your academic years are all correct. Like if you want to close the previous year and open up new year, you can do that through your online application. So this link explains the instructions, but if you need help, just reach out to us and we can help you update your forms. Follow advancing admissions records for the next admissions year if applicable. So this would be for like your applicants who had not finished the application perhaps and were in the middle of the admissions process for the previous year, and you want to now move their application to the next year so that instead of just marking them as that they decided not to come to your school, you could actually restart the process for them or continue the process for them to the next academic year. So there's some this article provides the instructions in more details. Delete, deactivate old users. So like if you have staff members and parents and students who are leaving the school, you can deactivate or delete their users. If you go to security users, there are different ways that you can find such people, but typically by creating a filter, you can find users who are not coming back. And once you find them, you can select them and use the multi-action to either drop all of the roles that they have or even delete them if they won't be logging in anymore. Then remove purchase options for former students, faculty. This only applies if you are using our point of sale system, such as the lunch module. So when we go to finance, AR students, this the same could be applicable for staff records. But when you go to details, there's a tab called purchase options. This tab basically specifies how much money the student can spend when they're buying lunch, how much credit that they can use before they're not allowed to use any more credit. So like max unpaid balance. How much money should automatically be auto loaded when the student doesn't have much funds for their like for lunch. So these fields can be cleared out for students and staff members who are not coming back. And then I'll also go ahead and click this end of school year checklist. This has a few more items. So for example, associate mark type headings to courses for any new courses. So if you are offering new courses that you had not offered previously, you can create like mark types or like grading criteria for them. Or if there's already a grading criteria available, you can just tag or assign the new courses to those mark types. And to do that, you can go to admin courses. You can select the new courses and then go to multi-action, add mark type, and you can associate the new courses with whichever mark types that are applicable to those courses. If none of them are applicable, you can create new mark types or new mark types and associate them. All right, so then for admissions, this part we already covered in the previous article. We already covered this part too. Here it says for CMS forms, change use next academic year property to no. So basically in your parent portal, I'm gonna go back to the parent portal. If you are using enrollment forms, there's this widget in enrollment forms called student/inquiry selection. So if you open it up, um, you would want to set this to no, because you've rolled over the school year. Now when you receive forms, they'll be for the current year, but before you had rolled over, when students were submitting forms or when families were submitting forms, they would have been for the new academic year. So once the school year is closed, because the new academic year is now the current academic year, you would set this property to no. All right, let's see what else. For summer camps, add graduated summer or withdrew summer actions to all students. So basically, if you are using the summer module, you would have a separate division for that purpose. So um, if I go back to the home page, Here in the top drop down, we can see that we have different divisions like upper school, middle school, and one of them is the summer division. So in the summer division, if you have this would be done after your summer session is over. So if your summer session is not over right now, you wouldn't do it at this time. In fact, you wouldn't close the school year until summer session is over. So if you're still in summer session, don't close the school year at this time until your summer session is over. And once the summer session is over, when you go to that division, you can kind of mark the students in that summer division as like graduated or summer session completed and so forth, so that they're not marked as enrolled anymore in the summer division. So that basically wraps up the webinar for today, and I've covered all the items that I had planned to cover. Um, but yeah, just make sure to go through the documentation as they'll provide a lot more details than I could cover in a short webinar. And if you have any questions, just email support@PCReducator, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding this webinar. And I want to thank you all for joining me. Thank you, everyone. Bye.